Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 3, the final part for today, at least it should be, for Wednesday, April 10th, 2013. My website is ggnonline.com, and on YouTube, ddarko2012, ddarko2013 my YouTube channels. If you want to check out some of these links or stories I'm covering, they're in YouTube's video description. Alright, now we're getting into some social engineering in that. First article I have is Russia's Orthodox leader says feminism is very dangerous. The head of the resurgent Russian Orthodox Church said on Tuesday feminism was a very dangerous phenomenon, offering an illusion of freedom to women who should focus on their families and children. Some 3/4 of Russians consider themselves Russian Orthodoxes, and says here he's pretty close ties with Putin, who has portrayed the church as the guardian of Russian national values. He was quoted saying, "I find very dangerous this phenomenon, which is called feminism, because feminist organizations proclaim a pseudo-freedom of women that should in the first place be manifested outside marriage and outside the family." So it says here that the man turns his sight outward, he should work, make money, while a woman is always focused inward towards her children, her home. If this exceptionally important role of a woman is destroyed, everything will be destroyed as a consequence, family, and if you wish, the homeland. It says here, Kirill once likened Putin's role over Russia to a miracle of God, and the president he has said the Orthodox Church should play a bigger role in the country where faith runs deep after the fall of the officially atheist Soviet Union. Life and death of a feminist fighter, says here this Shalamith Firestone helped start the movement that rejected her. She sparked radical New York feminism in the late 1960s and inspired the entire movement that followed, was devastated and left to die in isolation after a fellow activist rejected her. Less known today, Firestone started early feminist groups and wrote the highly influential Dialectic of Sex. It says here that she saw the family as the embryo of all political antagonisms and argued that exaggeration of children's dependence forced women into extreme bondage to motherhood. So it says here she rebelled against her Orthodox Jewish father and was beaten by her brother, she said, for ignoring religious law. So she brought the intensity to her fellow activists in an internal dispute. She quit the movement and slipped into paranoid schizophrenia, eventually dying alone in her New York apartment last year, much like other 1960s feminists who ended up infirm, mentally ill, or even homeless. I just saw this article on Yahoo. Mother declares her children are the biggest regret of her life. It said, let's talk about a mom who regrets her children. Last week, Daily Mail published a full-person story by Isabel Dutton, a 57-year-old mother of 2 children, who declared her children to be the biggest regret of her life. Since the Daily Mail is possibly the internet's leading purveyor of human interest in hating other humans' stories, it goes without saying that the article incited and was intended to incite a monstrous tsunami of scorn. She feels trapped by the intense demands of her children, calling them parasites. And you go and check out most of the comments. They agree with that person. Justin Bieber's Rihanna Miley Cyrus-Inspired haircut. So says here the return of the side shave. Justin Bieber has joined the ranks of Rihanna, Robin, Skrillex, and Miley Cyrus with a new side-swept, shaved undercut. So why do I care? Well, because it covers the androgynous agenda. So, right? Like this woman who's been in the news recently arrested for battery, Jenna Jameson, who does not look like the same person that I saw maybe 10 years ago. She has a shaved head and looks like lots of plastic surgery. But it has to do, like I said many times before, morphing female into the male and male into the female. Teen, I was raped by 4 200-pound women. Now, this is a trend, again, of women raping men. Now, I'm not just trying to say one thing and the other when I cover stuff in this video. It's just that I'm trying to even the scales. So that's all I'm trying to do. Where, you know, some things I've never talked about and covered too much. It says here, Toronto police seek alleged assailants. Like, what I'm talking about is like the whole rape thing. Rape. Everyone, you know, oh, a bra that's going to protect you from rape. Ooh, underwear, you know, made to protect women from rape. What about men, you know? I just saw another article today in the Mail Online about some chick that was like, they called her Pepper. She was like peppermint schnapps chick, and she assaulted like a cab driver, pulling and twisting his nipples or some crap. Police say 4 women weighing about 200 pounds each raped a Toronto man last month after offering him a lift home. So they met him downtown nightclub, accepted the ride, but they drove him only a few blocks in the SUV before turning into a parking lot and assaulting him. The police described the women as being about 5'4" in their early 30s. One had a British accent and a tattoo of wings on the back of her neck. So assaults by females on males are not unheard of in Toronto. It says that in 2003 they found that 8% of sexual complaints were male. Male victims were just as likely as females to report them. So like someone else pointed out, 25% of people thought that story was funny or hilarious. Montana representative insists no homophobic issues here as he votes against decriminalization of gay sex. So Montana Republican state representative insisted Tuesday that there's no homophobic issues, even as he prepares to cast a vote continuing to apply a federal criminal penalty to LGBT people simply for being who they are. So it says here, he planned to vote against this bill, which seeks to amend the state's criminal definition of deviant sexual relations to exclude homosexual acts. A lot of love and respect for a whole number of homosexual friends, so there's no homophobic issues here. He says that I don't think homosexual sex is necessarily not deviant. He said, bad word, deviate simply means it's not normal, it's not typical. He then held aloft a ballpoint pen, showing it to his fellow lawmakers. Says this pen has two purposes. Of course, one is to write, the second is to retract. But one is primary and the other is secondary. To me, sex's primary purpose is to produce people. That's why we're all here. He says sex that doesn't produce people is deviant. He says that doesn't mean that it's a problem. It just means that it's not doing its primary purpose. So I'm just speaking to the bill, and I encourage people to vote red. Hundreds rally against same-sex marriage, adoption in Paris. This is from April 5th. So then there's this story that came across. Paris beating gives a face to homophobia. So raw photo prompts online reaction in support of Wilfred Bruin. So it says here he's reportedly beaten for walking arm in arm with his boyfriend Olivier early Sunday morning. It says here a French resident says he was assaulted while walking in Paris, and he sustained injuries including a missing tooth, broken bones. So this is right on the cusp of this bill being passed and that. And if it happened, it sucks. You know, like I have to put out there as a disclaimer, I don't condone violence against something that you don't agree with like that. But I think it's a psyop. One person doubts the legitimacy of his story, saying that the photo, where was the photo taken, why was his wounds not being addressed? He also wondered why it took only 10 days of leave from work for the injuries sustained. Well, so who knows if the story is inconsistent and fake, but they actually blame it on Muslims, which is another big deal in France as well. So, but like everything else, the agenda moves forward. Whatever they have to do, like the prison chief that was shot and killed in Colorado on the eve of passing their gun legislation. France's Senate approved same-sex marriage bill. So they approved a controversial same-sex marriage bill regardless of massive opposition to the legislation in the country. So opponents of the bill say children have a fundamental right to have a father and a mother, and that the bill will lead to the disintegration of the family's institution or family institution. French churches have also condemned the bill, calling gay marriage a sham that would shake one of the foundations of our society. Again, I'm not condoning what this person's saying, but I think he has the right still to say it. And for whatever it's worth, the UFC fighter on transgender fighter, sick freak, so he gets suspended for a transphobic dig. So in a statement, he said it was they were appalled by the transphobic comments, calling them offensive and wholly unacceptable. Fox's gender reassignment surgery, which she underwent in 2006, and her hormonal therapy has been big news in the MMA. Says some expressed that she may have physical advantage when fighting other women, but they went on and said that calling the situation embarrassment to us fighters and continually referring to Fox as a male. It's always, there's the thing that I talk about even in the scales and that, is it's always one-sided. You can't say anything about anything, right? They're completely intolerant to anybody that opposes their views. But then other people, they just get shot down, right? So this individual, like Jeremy Irons, who, you know, had to apologize, but said, you know, I still agree with what I said, believe what I said. And most people just stand down and say, okay, you're right, I'm sorry, I apologize, I'm a piece of shit. Elderly Christian florist faced thousands in fines for refusing to provide flowers for a gay wedding. The Christian florist in Washington State would be slapped with hefty fines because she refused to provide a floral arrangement for a gay wedding. So, on March 1st, the owner of the floral place, refused to sell flowers to Robert Ingersoll for his marriage to Kurt Feet. He said he decided to get married, and before he got through, I grabbed his hand and said, "I'm sorry, I can't do your wedding because of my relationship with JC." She said it was the only wedding she had declined in 37 years. But Ferguson said the stance violates the law. Under the Consumer Protection Act, it's unlawful to discriminate against customers on the basis of a sexual orientation. You're going to force somebody to do something they don't want to do. So they're talking about it's about being a human, being who you are. In that article, well, it's about forcing other people to pay for something that they don't want to do or provide services for something that they don't morally support. If a business provides a product or service to opposite-sex couples for their weddings, then it must provide same-sex couples the same product or service. Wow. It says here some of her neighbors in a very liberal state agree that she should be compelled to sell flowers regardless of her religion. One resident told KEPR-TV she does not have the right to say no. The station reported Stutzman has received death threats after her simple testimony of faith went viral. Then you have Etsy shop owner refuses same-sex couples marriage businesses, claiming Christian values. So I guess two women wanted a guest book for their wedding, and they didn't receive a reply. Then the person replied saying, "After talking with my pastor and praying about the situation, I decided that I shouldn't design your guest book." She says, "I hope you understand, or understanding. Sorry for staying in contact with you for so long and not giving you a concrete response until now." The author says, "We just love Miss Fong is apologetic for her slow response, but not for denigrating the priceless, happy occasion of a fellow human being. We love that she also seems to think that the simple exclusion and cruelty are Christian principles. For the sake of future religion, we hope that this is not the case." Etsy's terms allow shop owner to refuse services. It also reserves the right to suspend shops that abuse the privilege. It goes on and it says that it goes against the company's mission statement of making commerce in the world more fair. Then another one from this queer TY, free of an agenda except the gay one. Threatened by new legislation, the Boy Scouts of America may consider embracing the LGBT community. So enough threats, and eventually the private organization will get forced to adopt this agenda. After a Senate committee meeting earlier today, it looks like California may be the first state to take action against the Boy Scouts and other nonprofit groups that do not welcome gays and transsexuals as members. Say it's sad that legislation is required to help force the Boy Scouts out of a dated admissions policy, especially since they've been using the California's taxpayers' money for decades to promote their anti-LGBT agenda. These are the same people that don't mind tax dollars going to teaching grade schoolers how to masturbate and telling them that, all this stuff is normal. Army labeled evangelicals, and they're all for like handing out pills at high school, and Planned Parenthood being at schools and telling them how abortion, it's your right, and that it's just tissue, it's not a human being or anything. A medic's graphic account of beheading live babies at abortion house of horrors in Philadelphia, fetuses and blood all over the place. A medical school graduate has given a graphic account of working at the Philadelphia abortion clinic and how he routinely saw babies born alive and then killed with scissors. So a former employee described how she heard a baby scream during a live birth abortion. Said, "I couldn't describe it, it sounded like a little alien." Unlike the word tissue, instead of people, they said during the 2 years, they also saw patients deliver, quote, specimens in the toilet, which she made the coworker remove, adding that she called aborted fetuses specimens because it was easier to deal with mentally. U.S. judge lifts morning after pill age limit. They've ordered the government to make the morning after pill available over the counter to girls of all ages within 30 days. After pro-life outcry, YMCA disinvites Planned Parenthood from Girls' Day conference. The YMCA announced they were going to include Planned Parenthood and feature them at Girls' Day 2013. So they could talk about building healthy relationships, like reproductive health. No kids, men more depressed about it. Even though there's often more social pressure on women to have kids, men may actually feel more depressed and lonely over not having children. Now men get a post-pregnancy glow. New fathers feel more attractive after their partners give birth. Remember, this army labeled evangelicals as religious extremists. And a report says DHS suggests Christians constitutionalists should get extra surveillance. In regards to what they refer to as fundamentalists, those that do not agree with the current political trends are dangerous and should be under the scrutiny of law enforcement. Russia moves to introduce jail sentences for insulting believers' feelings. It has to do with the riot who staged a protest in a church while it was in procession, and feminists like this. Thank you.